to talk about is what human beings choose when placed in extreme situations, how they conduct themselves, and the ripples that those choices send through the hearts of everyone around them. In February 2026, an event that took place in Milan, Italy, shook the hearts of millions of people around the world. At its center were two Japanese figure skaters, Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara. What they left behind on the ice was not a score or a record, but proof of human beauty, the kind that never fades, no matter how much time passes. To understand this story properly, we need to go back a little in time. Before the Olympics began, the pair of Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara, affectionately known as Riku-Ryu, were widely recognized as the world's finest in pairs figure skating. The years since they first teamed up have been far from short. It started with their first meeting, followed by technical trial and error, battles against physical injury, periods of being mentally pushed to the edge, and the trust and bond they built up little by little. Over the course of more than 6 years, the two forged a special relationship that went beyond being merely a skating pair. Ryuichi Kihara is a craftsman of a skater, a man of few words who keeps honing his technique with quiet sincerity. Riku Miura is a young talent who, behind an innocent, radiant smile, possesses a mental toughness that is nothing short of astonishing. The chemistry this pairing produced was not simple addition but multiplication. They covered each other's weaknesses and drew out each other's strengths. A relationship like that had been slowly nurtured over a long span of time. The Riku-Ryu pair heading into the Milan Olympics were, by anyone's reckoning, the overwhelming favorites for gold. Stable performances throughout the season, a high level of technical polish, and the mental maturity earned through experience, every element was in place. But the cruelty of competition lies precisely in this. No matter how much you prepare, no one can know what will happen the moment you step onto the ice. The human body is not a machine. It has emotions, it has memories, it has nerves, and sometimes, at the most crucial moment, the most unexpected thing happens. The Riku-Ryu pair would have that reality thrust upon them in the most searing way imaginable. On the day of the short program, the ice arena in Milan was packed. As spectators gathered from all over the world watched with bated breath, Miura and Kihara took to the rink. The performance began. The opening triple twist lift was beautifully executed high, cleanly rotated, with a stable landing. The jumps that followed also went smoothly, and the atmosphere in the arena warmed up bit by bit. Just as everyone began to think, at this rate it happened. On the lift that was their greatest weapon, the element perfected through endless hours of practice, the unbelievable occurred. Kihara couldn't fully support Miura, and their balance broke. They avoided an outright fall, but it was a clear mistake. A mistake unlike Riku-Ryu, all too ordinary, yet at the worst possible timing imaginable. A murmur spread through the arena. Silence fell over the commentary booth, and on the faces of the two standing on the rink, something changed. The performance went on, but the entire arena could feel it. Something had gone wrong. The score was announced. 73.11. The moment they saw that number, many people couldn't believe their eyes. It was more than 9 points below the personal best they had set in the team event. 5th place. The gap behind the leading German pair was 6.9 points. Laid out as numbers alone, it was a hopeless reality. In pairs figure skating, overturning a deficit that large in the single free program is not theoretically impossible, but in practice it is exceedingly rare. Choosing their words carefully, the experts called it a difficult situation. Some outlets had already begun turning their gaze toward another pair for the gold. It was a moment when the storybook ending the world had been dreaming of was quietly being rewritten. But numbers can only tell us so much. Numbers have no words to convey what happened afterward, in a hotel room. After the competition was over, Ryuichi Kihara reportedly wept the whole time once he returned to his lodgings. Everything he had built over more than 6 years, his responsibility to his partner, his feelings about the Olympic stage, and his expectations of himself, all of it had come crumbling down in the instant of that lift. The weight of it makes your chest ache just to imagine. His tears were not weakness. If anything, they were proof of how deeply he loved the sport, proof of how sincere he was toward his partner and his team. I believe that only truly strong people can truly weep that deeply. Because to be able to weep means you were facing it that seriously. And sitting beside that Kihara was Riku Miura. Normally, in the Riku-Ryu pair, it's Kihara who tends to be the emotional pillar, the one who leads Miura along. The composure of the older partner, the soundness of his judgment, his ability to set the mood, that was Kihara's role. But that night, everything was reversed. Beside the weeping Kihara, Miura never once looked down. She showed no anxiety. She spoke no words of resignation. With a smile, quietly but with unmistakable strength, she kept sitting at her partner's side. It's okay. Tomorrow, we'll come back for sure. She is said to have repeated those words again and again. It was not groundless comfort. It was a thing born of deep trust in the long road the two of them had walked together. We've come this far, so surely, tomorrow we can do it too. That conviction dwelled quietly beneath her words. Later, Miura put it this way, in an interview. Ryuichi, who always pulls me along, kept crying the whole time, so this time, I was the big sister. And she said it with a smile. Take a moment to consider just how much is packed into that single remark. At 24, on the Olympic stage, the most pressure-filled stage of her life, on the night she had been most thoroughly beaten down, she set aside her own frustration and anxiety and became the big sister for her partner's sake. That is less kindness than it is resolve. A quiet, powerful resolve to stand on the next day's stage as a team. Precisely because there was a failure, tomorrow we'll handle each element with care. With those words carved into their hearts, the two of them went to sleep. The next morning, February 16, the day of the free program arrived. As the performances of the skaters drawn to skate before them went on, the two waited quietly. People who saw their expressions said that something had changed from the night before. It was not resignation, it was not defiance, either. There was simply something burning, quietly and deeply. What that something was would soon become clear. Riku-Ryu's performance began. The music was Gladiator film music depicting the story of an ancient Roman gladiator who keeps fighting while preserving his dignity in the face of adversity. When they first put the program together, perhaps no one imagined that this choice of music would come to hold such perfect meaning on this day. But as it turned out, the music, the skaters' situation, and their emotions overlapped as if by miracle, and the span of 4 minutes was transformed into something that soared far beyond the bounds of competition. The opening triple twist lift was executed, as if to banish the previous day's nightmare high, beautiful, perfect. In that moment, the air in the arena changed completely. Then came the 3 jumps in succession. Triple loop, double axel. Double axel. Each time their landings came in perfect unison. Voices began to spill naturally from the stands. And then came the moment everyone had been watching with bated breath, that lift. The day before, this was precisely where it had collapsed. That memory was etched into the skaters' bodies. Human instinct is designed to remember pain and to fear repeating the same mistake, which is exactly why landing it perfectly here again was not a matter of technique but a matter of the spirit. Kihara powerfully lifted Miura skyward. Stable rotation, a beautiful position, and conviction that didn't waver in the slightest. The quality was so overwhelming that commentator Daisuke Takahashi blurted out that it was a performance on a cosmic level. The throw jump, the death spiral, every element became one with the music, weaving together a single great story. Japanese national team skater Kaori Sakamoto, watching from the stands, is said to have shed tears as she watched the performance. Because as a comrade fighting on the same ice, she knew firsthand how much pressure they had battled and how much preparation they had stacked up. That is why the tears flowed. They were tears slightly different from the emotion of a spectator. The tears of the highest respect a warrior offers to a warrior. At the moment of the finish, Miura thrust her fist high into the air. Kihara dropped to his knees, his composure breaking as he could no longer hold back his emotions. The entire arena rose to its feet, and the standing ovation would not stop. The score appeared. 158.13, a free skate world record. A combined total of 231.24. An unbelievable comeback from 5th place after the short. What that number meant needed no explanation by now. But something more important than the numbers happened next. As the final skater's performance ended, and the moment came for all the rankings to be confirmed, the two of them sat quietly beside the kiss and cry, gazing at the monitor. A few seconds of silence, and then the words displayed on the screen. First place, Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara, gold medal. Normally, in that instant, emotion explodes. Tears overflow, you embrace, you express your joy with your whole body. That is an utterly natural human reaction. But Riku Miura, in that very instant, quietly turned her gaze toward the German pair seated beside her and gave them her applause. Having led after the short, only to be overtaken in the free and lose the gold by a hair's breadth, Miura instantly imagined their pain. The reality that, at the happiest moment of her life, the person beside her was the one most deeply wounded, and that imagination moved her hand. She put her own joy off by just a little, and showed her respect for the other first. That footage of a few seconds spread across social media all over the world. The moment the gold was decided, she didn't celebrate right away. She applauded the German skaters beside her. I can't believe she could show such consideration for others in a high-pressure moment like that. This is what sportsmanship is. This is the reason we respect and love the Japanese people. Such words poured out from around the world, and those voices are still spreading even now quietly, but unmistakably. The medal ceremony began. The moment Japan's national anthem began to play quietly through the ice arena in Milan, everyone present naturally fell still. On the chests of the two standing at the center of the podium, gold medals gleamed. Ryuichi Kihara, 33. In that moment, he became the oldest Japanese Olympic gold medalist. A man who had once spoken of a period when he even felt ashamed of the discipline he had chosen now stood at the summit of the world in that very discipline. It had been a long road. There had been injuries. There had been doubts. There must have been moments when he nearly gave up. And yet he kept going. And now, a gold medal had given its answer to all those years. Riku Miura, 24. A young talent with an innocent, radiant smile and a mental toughness that astonishes everyone. On the podium too, her smile was unchanged, but the depth behind that smile looked a little different than before. It was the gleam of quiet pride that only those who have gained experience possess. She says that meeting Ryuichi was a miracle. And Kihara, too, answers quietly that he feels nothing but gratitude. If she hadn't reached out to me, I wouldn't be here. The lightning bolt shock the two of them felt when they first teamed up had been no mistake. Kihara, who builds things up silently and steadily with few words, and Miura, always laughing brightly at his side. A one-of-a-kind puzzle in all the world, one that couldn't exist without each of them, was at last completed on the stage in Milan. The failure in the short, the period of suffering through Kihara's injury, the moments when their relationship wavered, all of it, we can now say, were pieces necessary for this gold medal. We'll come back, for sure. They fulfilled that promise in the finest possible form. Their radiant smiles on the podium gave a quiet courage to everyone who saw them. The Riku-Ryu pair captivated the world not only with their competitive ability but with their humanity. The miracle they drew on the ice will be passed down forever, not merely as a record, but as a memory. But here, I'd like to stop for a moment and think. To take this story simply as a moving tale and leave it at that would be far too great a waste. Because within this event are packed several deep insights that we can carry directly back into our daily lives. As I followed this story of Milan from beginning to end, there was a moment that left an impression on me far more powerful than the result of who won or lost. It was those few seconds Miura showed right after the gold was confirmed. I still strongly feel that that quiet applause was the moment that distilled the very essence of this entire drama. Think about it. Where is the moment when human beings become most emotional? The moment a years-long dream comes true? The moment accumulated effort is rewarded? The moment you realize you stand at the summit of the world? In such moments, the human brain floods with adrenaline, the field of vision narrows to the extreme, and consciousness focuses on the self. That is an utterly natural reaction for a living creature, and no one can blame anyone for it. And yet Miura, in that very moment, set her own emotions aside for just an instant and thought of the German pair sitting beside her. To truly understand how difficult this is requires a little imagination. The German pair had led after the short program. The gold medal must have been within reach. All that was left was to defend it. They may have had that much breathing room, but in the free, they let Riku-Ryu overtake them. The pain of that moment is something words could never fully express. Miura was able to imagine that pain in an instant. The reality that, at the happiest moment of her life, the person right in front of her was the one most deeply wounded. And that imagination quietly moved her hand. She put her own joy off by just a little, and showed her respect for the other first. The reason the world trembled at that act is that it was not calculation, but the natural expression of her humanity. It was not trained politeness, but empathy welling up from the bottom of her heart, that appeared in the form of that applause, or so I feel. What I particularly want to stress here is that we must not simply file this action away under words like Japanese humility or politeness. Of course, I won't say such cultural background is entirely unrelated, but that is not the essence. The essence of that applause is proof that she did not lose her human imagination even under extreme pressure. It is proof of human depth, the ability to put yourself in the other's place even in a moment when emotion is about to explode. And that depth is not something acquired overnight. It can only be nurtured through the accumulation of how you live, day by day. Strength as a competitor, and gentleness as a human being coexisting at the same depth, that, I think, is the most fundamental charm of the duo called Riku-Ryu. So, what concretely can we learn from this story? I believe this event holds 3 essential lessons. The first is that victory is built not by technique alone but by relationships. It goes without saying that technique is a prerequisite, but what ultimately produces the decisive difference is how quickly and how deeply you can recover after a mistake. And that power of recovery can never be acquired merely by getting your jumps in sync in practice. The savings of trust built up in daily life, a relationship in which roles can be flexibly exchanged depending on the situation, the security of being able to show your weak moments without hiding them, and a culture that turns mistakes into fuel for the next action rather than into a hunt for someone to blame. Only when these combine is a team born that can rise again after collapsing. The reason Kihara could keep weeping in the hotel was that there was someone there to catch him even when he cried. There was a place where he could fall apart in safety, and the reason Miura could catch him with a smile was that she had the strength not to blame her partner. In many teams and pairs, the leader is fixed. The emotional pillar and the role of inspiring others tend always to be carried by the same person, but a truly strong team has the flexibility to change roles when the situation changes. That night, Riku-Ryu pulled this off naturally, without even being conscious of it. I believe that was no accident. It was the depth of a relationship built up over more than 6 years, appearing in its natural form at the moment of crisis. The second lesson is that true mental strength is not about erasing emotion but about managing emotion. Strong athletes are often thought to be without emotion, but that is a great misunderstanding. Fear, frustration, the urge to cry, the urge to run away, such emotions exist equally even in top athletes. What differs is how they engage with those emotions. Weak teams either pretend not to see negative emotions or are completely swallowed by them. Strong teams, after acknowledging those emotions, know the procedure for converting them in a different direction. Miura's words, "It's okay, tomorrow will come back for sure," sound, on the surface, like simple encouragement. But the function those words served was to clear away the fog called hesitation and focus the two of them's awareness on a single point: how to skate tomorrow. The human body stiffens when it is hesitating. Only when the direction is set and resolve is fixed does natural, supple movement emerge. Miura's words were the mental groundwork that allowed Kihara's body to move on the rink the next day. The choice of Gladiator can be discussed in the same context. Music is not mere staging. It is the skeleton of the story a skater rides upon during a performance, by overlaying themselves onto the story of a gladiator who rises from adversity and fights with dignity. They did not suppress their fear but rather built that fear into the story of the fight. Rather than forgetting the mistake in the short, they went to complete a story that included even that mistake. What they did was exactly that, not to erase past failure, but to make the failure the first half of the work. This is how first-rate mental strength is used. The third lesson is that what the world truly respects is not strength, but how strength is used. Winning itself is, of course, magnificent, but how you conduct yourself after winning determines whether that victory becomes a mere record or becomes a culture. That applause was courtesy toward an opponent, and at the same time an act that further raised the value of their own victory. Sportsmanship is not empty idealism. Viewed over the long term, it is an extremely real asset directly tied to one's evaluation as an athlete, the trust of sponsors, and the admiration the next generation holds. People who do not monopolize victory, who can share the contest, ultimately win the greatest support and respect. The response from around the world this time proved that once again. What spread on social media was not just the photo of the gold medal. It was the footage of those few seconds of applause. People are moved not by records alone, but by the ethics of a story. From here, I'd like to speak a bit toward the future. I strongly feel that we must not consume this miracle of Milan as a moving story and leave it at that. If anything, this is where the real work begins. The gold medal is not the goal. It is an event that has set the new standard. From here on, the Riku-Ryu pair will walk through an even heavier light, not merely as competitors, but as a presence that embodies Japan's sports culture. Expectation is both a blessing and a trial. Precisely because the world has come to love them so strongly, the world will also pay attention to how they look the next time they hit a wall. That is exactly why everyone around them needs to learn something concrete from this event. For athletes and teams, it's important to prepare a script for crisis in advance. Decide, from the practice stage, who says what and takes what action when a mistake occurs. Rather than reflecting after the match, share a watchword for recovering during the match. What Riku-Ryu did naturally, other teams should consciously design as a system. Role swapping too needs to be built into practice, the experience of the one who always supports becoming the one who is supported. A design in which the mental leader is not fixed. The construction of a relationship in which one can lift the other up when they collapse. These can be cultivated not by talent but by deliberate training. And to coaches and federations, I want to call for investing in psychology and relationships with the same intensity as in technique. There is an urgent need to position sports psychology and communication specialists as standard support staff, and to eliminate, as a matter of culture, the assigning of blame for failure. The world's top teams treat failure as learning data. They analyze the behavior without negating the person. That difference is what shows up, over the long term, as a gap in competitive ability. Finally, let me deliberately state my personal conclusion in strong terms. What is truly fearsome about this miracle of Milan is that they obtained something more difficult than winning a gold medal. That is the respect of the world. Victories may someday be rewritten, scores change, and so do the rules, but the memory of that applause will not easily fade. And as long as that memory endures, the name Riku-Ryu will continue to be spoken of not as mere gold medalists, but as a presence that embodied the very essence of sport. The reason I am not pessimistic is that they are a team that carried out, will come back, for sure. They are people who turned words into results. Even if a wall comes again on the next stage, they surely won't blame anyone. They'll set their procedure in order, sync their breathing, and come back once more. And that sight will, again, light a lamp in someone's life. Sport has the power to set off that kind of chain reaction. What Riku-Ryu proved in Milan was the truth obvious, yet the hardest of all that strength and gentleness can coexist. There's no need to turn cold in order to win. There's no need to grow arrogant after winning. If anything, the higher the place a person stands, the more they can look out over those around them. That very sight, they are telling the world quietly, but unmistakably, is the condition for the champions of the next era. Even if the ice of Milan melts, the dignity of those few seconds should keep moving the world from here on. Whether this story ends as a miracle or takes root as a culture depends on what we, from here, learn from their example and how we turn it into a system. I want to see a future in which Riku-Ryu's applause becomes the standard for the next generation. And that future will not come from emotion alone. I believe it can only be reached by learning, by setting things in order, and by supporting one another. Strong and gentle, they have proven for us that holding both at once is the condition for the champions of the next era. How we answer that call, the answer is still to come.